Hey there, welcome back to the video series about rhetoric in musicals. Once again, my name is Rochelle, and let's dive into the feminist rhetorical theories and how it's reflected on the musicals Six and Hamilton. So just another little recap. So the feminist rhetorical theory focuses on the idea that women and men have different life experiences, and that means that they're going to have different viewpoints on items. And that's going to be reflected in their writing. And this is especially true of the female characters that I see throughout Six and Hamilton. So Six was co-written by Lucy Moss, who is a girl, and the cast of Six is completely women or non-binary. And I thought that was really interesting because you think like, okay, well maybe like the background characters, because it's a band, so like maybe like the guitarist or the drummer, they're gonna be like maybe a guy. But no, it's completely made up of women, which I think is really, really cool. So the main characters are the wives, so Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anna of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr. There's a lot of Catherines. And these six women allow like very different personalities to mingle on the stage, which I think is really cool because they didn't just kind of like stick to they're a wife, they're a girl type of thing. They branched out of that. So Catherine of Aragon is very much the queen, she's the first wife, she's the oldest, she was older than Henry. She wore gold, which kind of helps symbolize like her wealth coming from being a Spanish princess, and also like the wisdom from being the oldest one. And she's very kind of given off as like being a little bit prude, but that's only in the cast recording. Like if you see her performance, it's very much like kind of fun, very big sisterly. And she is very devoted, a very devoted character, which I thought was really interesting because instead of just being like hopelessly following Henry, she's devoted to being a mother. She very much loves Mary. She's devoted to her religion. She holds on to that. So like her whole personality is rooted in her religion, being Catholic. She even has like a halo crown on her as part of her costume. She's very steadfast. She's sitting here. One of her lines is, "If you would tell me anything that I've done wrong to you, let me know and I'll go." Oh, there's nothing wrong? Too bad, I'm not leaving. So I like how they give her that kind of sass because it kind of shows like historically she was the way women were supposed to be, but in the retelling she's able to have that sassiness and just that kind of like type of thing, which is very, very cool. Anne Boleyn, she's a French aristocrat. And she's kind of shown off as being like a temptress, she wore like red lipstick and she wore green, which at the time green was very much like scandalous. It kind of showed off that like you were willing to let people have fun. And I like her character because she plays dumb and very childish because she was quite young. But she's incredibly smart, and it's forgotten because she's not labeled as nothing more in history than just like the woman who changed history by being so sexy that the king had to have her, and he ruined the like Catholic entity of England. But she's really, really smart, and that's shown in one of her lines that discusses the patriarchal structures of history and how men tie women into other men because there's only one way to group them. The woman can't be bold and like individuals basically. But another part of her is that they kind of briefly go over it. She is used as a pawn, like a political pawn as a family to try to like gain power. The third wife is Jane Seymour, and she's very much the like stereotypical mother. Like her whole legacy is the fact that she birthed Henry Edward, like the first heir, the first male, because he did have children. He had Mary from Catherine of Aragon, and then he had Elizabeth from Anne Boleyn, but he finally had the son he wanted. So it's sad, but a lot of her history is wiped away in Henry's love of her being able to give him that child. So she is perceived as the female archetype, but it's kind of like they dig deeper than that because they say, okay, she's this loving mother, and her tragedy is that she never got to be a mother. She is the birth mother, but she died very soon after, so she never got to like fulfill that. And her love is just pure, which is why she wears white. She has like pure love for her son and for Henry, even though she understands that it's dangerous to love Henry, to love a man like that, because of who he is and his temper, and just kind of like, if she didn't have Edward, then everything would just kind of be thrown out the window. And it kind of shows that, like, yes, women can be emotional creatures, but they're deeper than that. There's reasoning behind that emotion. It's not just emotions taking the wheel and like veering us off the cliff. It's a good understanding of how emotions work in general, not just for women. Anna of Cleves is the fourth queen. She's one of my favorites. She's very sassy, very independent. She's full of self-love, and she's even angry. Like, they allow her to be angry. She is really interesting because she was one of the survivors. She was divorced, but she was given a settlement of money and a castle and all these riches, and she just didn't remarry. And that was like, oh, scandalous, because a Tudor woman, like in Tudor society, you had to be married, otherwise you're ostracized. And that's shown later by Catherine Parr's character. But Anna of Cleves, she was German. She just didn't care. She was like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm happy here where I am. And I like that her color palette is red, because it's passionate, just like her. And it's a little bit angry, just like her. So I think that the colors that they throw into the wardrobe is very much just kind of pushes the idea that they want behind the characters, which I thought was really cool. So Catherine Howard is the fifth wife, and she, like Anne Boleyn, was beheaded. She was English, and she was perceived as promiscuous because she had relationships before she was married with the king, and he didn't know about them. And then when they were brought to light, that just horrified him. And because of her, it is now required that a queen relay all of her past relationships to the monarch. So she was taken advantage of by men in her life from a very young age. Since about the age of 13, and she kind of has this moment throughout her, like her entire song is about like them using her, and then in the end she breaks down after someone she trusted just kind of ended up being exactly like everybody else, and she has this humongous like breakdown where she's like panicking and she's crying and she's screaming, but then immediately after the score ends, she's facing down, she just, well, that's how it was, you know. And I think that it's so interesting, because it's kind of funny, like, oh, you good on you, but it shows how women are expected to, yeah, you can break down, you can be emotional, and you can just like freak out, but you know, right away, boom, get back up, you're fine, you're good. Which I thought was super duper cool. And then her color palette includes pink, which I thought was really interesting because it's like fun, because her character is a very fun character. But it's like the idea of hiding a smile, like using a smile to hide your pain. But it also represents youth, which was kind of taken away from her. So Catherine Parr is the final wife, and she is the survivor, and that's kind of like embedded in her entire personality, that she just survived life. She just kind of took the blows and went on with it. And this is kind of shown through like her blue color palette, which is like inspiration, freedom, and intuition, because she was very smart. She was a writer and she was a patron of the arts, but her problem is that we remember her not for her own works, but because of who she married, like the second to last man that she married. She had to give up the love of her life in order to marry Henry so that she wouldn't die. She was in a courtship with Thomas Seymour, who is Jane Seymour's brother. But around that time that she was about to marry him, the king liked her, so she was forced to just kind of go with the king in order to not die like the other wives before her. So she's just talking about like the need for women they're just expected to give everything of themselves and sacrifice a whole lot. But rather than just sacrificing in silence, she kind of speaks up and is like, I don't like this. This isn't what we should have to do. Like, it should be give and take. Like, why is it this way? And then finally, they all kind of come together in the end, and they have a final number. It's titled 6, the song is, and they just kind of sing about if they could rewrite their stories for their own happy endings, this is what they would do. and I think it's really cool. But I'm gonna lie, it did confuse me the first time I listened to the soundtrack, because I was like, wait, this did not happen historically. But then I liked that, because it kind of shows that like women are taking back their stories and they're rewriting it exactly how they want it, rather than the way that a man would write it for them. So now that we've covered 6, let's go on to the feminism in Hamilton. So there are 2 different sides of women shown in Hamilton. I really like the women in Hamilton. There's the Schuyler sisters, and then there's Maria Reynolds, that's her name. I can't believe I forgot that. And so there's 2 different sides of women. It's kind of like the loud, outspoken, taking what they want side versus the like demure, supportive side. So the loud, outspoken side isn't really explored that much. It's shown in songs like the Schuyler sisters and Burn, where they talk about, like in the Schuyler sisters, it's about like, when I meet Thomas Jefferson, I'm not compelled to include women in the sequel, you know? Or in Burn, Eliza states that the world has no right to my heart, the world has no place in our bed. They don't get to know what I said. So they're kind of making their stand on where they want to be and what they want change. But it's mainly, when they're delivering those lines, it's to the audience, not to other characters. So it kind of shows like the historical aspect of it, where like internally they were that way, but externally they weren't. Which makes sense. There's a lot more of the supportive aspect of women in Hamilton, because the main character is a man, and it's kind of catering more to the historical aspect of the Schuylers, who kind of stood by Alexander and kind of helped him throughout everything, rather than taking what they wanted. There's a lot more examples of the songs where they're just kind of quiet, or like they're either in the ensemble or they're giving up actively something that they want. So like in Satisfied, Angelica's giving up her love life for her sister, and she does it very sadly. And Stay Alive, and that would be enough to take a break, Eliza is just kind of like hoping that Alexander just is satisfied and decides that he wants to be a family man rather than just kind of going to work all day. But she's still supporting the fact that he's going to work, and she's saying, it's good and I'm here for you, but can you think about me for a second? And then, no? Okay, I'm still going to support you. And then Best of Wives and Best of Women is like the kind of final thing where Hamilton kind of just reinforces the idea that you're a good wife, you're a good woman, like, thank you for being by my side all the time. And then he dies on her. So I think that there's like I like the historical aspect of it. It's definitely historically accurate that the women were more supportive, but it's a retelling. And so they could have made the women a little bit more outspoken. There were songs like Congratulations and First Burn that the women were outspoken to other characters, specifically Alexander. In Congratulations, Angelica is confronting Hamilton after he writes the Reynolds pamphlet and it's published, because he hurt Eliza and she's mad at him for it. She even smacks him at the end of the number. And in First Burn, Angelica is like yelling at Hamilton about how she knows everything that's going on. She knows that he's unfaithful and that he kind of puts himself first, and she's done with it and she's done with him. Whereas in Burn, it's very much like a personal decision that she may kind of internalize, and it was so much more powerful, I think, that it was like yelled at to him, basically. All the very, very beautifully sung yell, you know? And so from a comparative standpoint, I can see that like the impact of having women involved in the writing of a woman very much makes them a little bit stronger, in a sense. It gives them a little bit more personality. I know of other works by Lin-Manuel Miranda where, of course, the main character is a man and then they're supporting women, and it kind of seems to have the same pattern. So it just goes to show that when a woman is involved, that that rhetorical theory kind of them having different viewpoints, really, it's proven. And you can see that, well, what would happen if a woman helped co-write a work mainly put on by a man, and vice versa? Like, what would change if a man wrote something that was mainly wrote by a woman? It's an interesting thing to think about. So this was the second video regarding feminism and the feminist rhetorical theory, and the third video will be about nationalism and how the national views of a country are shown through its media.